So if you're dealing with bloating issues and you've decided to listen to the non-stop bad advice out there about how, oh, you just need more fiber and that's going to fix your bloating, in this video I'm going to help you understand why that does help some people, but why it also makes a lot of people so much worse. I'm also going to help you understand what's actually creating the trouble and steps you can take to improve the situation. Here we go.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So the bad advice usually starts with bloating from constipation. And if somebody's really constipated, all that material can back up and that can cause them to feel bloated. So then people are like, hey, if you just eat more fiber and move that stuff along, you won't be constipated and you won't be bloated anymore. So if somebody's just on the fence and they're just having a little bit of constipation because there's not enough volume of things to move things through more efficiently, when they increase their fiber, it really can improve the situation. And then they think, look at that, it helped me, so it must help everybody. But the reality is that constipation, especially chronic constipation, is not going to be fixed by fiber. Think of it like material moving through some type of pipe. As long as things are flowing, that material will move through. But when things start to get backed up, if you just start putting more and more material in there, then you're just going to create this backlog and more pressure and more trouble. So constipation is usually more about malfunctions going on in the digestive tract, or an imbalance in the body where the body is sending more of our water through the kidneys and less through the bowels. I've written a whole book about this, but if you are constipated, you'll need to fix that in order to improve the bloating. But we'll have a link in the description below for our video on fix constipation for good. I'm not going to dig all the way into that in this video, but fixing constipation is important, but fiber is usually not the way to make that happen. It's not going to help most people. So just keep in mind that fiber is not magic like people kind of make it sound to be when they're suggesting fiber for all these solutions for things that are going wrong. But it's also important to understand that fiber is also not evil like a lot of people are making it out to be today, especially like in the carnivore camp, especially the diet religion section of the carnivore camp, who kind of feel like anybody who's not doing this is so stupid. Why aren't you doing this? And what's going on is that they say that, well, these fibers are not really needed by humans. They're really just an irritant. They're creating all these food sensitivity issues, and you shouldn't be eating them at all. And so people stop eating them and they just eat carnivore stuff like meat and such, and they improve all these health issues. So they say, see, I done told you that. That ruined all the stuff. You just got to stop eating that. But the reality is that for some people, removing those vegetable items really can improve a lot of issues, a lot of inflammation that's going on in the body. But usually when that's the case, those problems are there because of malfunctions going on in the body. And if a person can improve those malfunctions, they don't need to use a carnivore diet. Now, I'm a fan of a carnivore diet. I use this with a lot of my clients when it's appropriate for them. But it's not appropriate for everybody, and using it long term has the ability to create some trouble. So just know that anybody that says, oh, this diet is right for everybody, they're just wrong. There is no diet that's right for every person because we all process foods differently. Never gonna happen. So if you want to understand this a little bit more and the trouble that can come with the carnivore, we'll have a link in the description below for our video on when is the carnivore diet wrong. Again, I'm a fan, I use it, but it's not right for everybody. So fiber is not really evil, but the type of fiber that you're consuming is going to matter. There are different types of fibers, and most foods will have insoluble and soluble fiber in there, but the structures of those independent foods can really change the way that they're going to react in the body. So we're going to go into that. The amount of fiber that you consume can also matter. A lot of people hear, oh, I need to increase my fiber. So then they just start eating all these high fiber foods. And going back to that pipe, they're just trying to push all this material through a situation that is not actually working correctly. And even when that is the case, some of these other troubles are really going to magnify when you increase the wrong types of fibers. So the ability for your body to process those fibers is also very important. We don't really break down fibers, but We have bacteria in our large intestine here that have the ability to ferment certain types of fibers, and when they do that, it generates other nutrients that our body uses, like short chain fatty acids, like butyrate, and that has the ability to really improve the health of the whole digestive tract and a lot of other areas of the body, including up in your brain. You kind of want your brain to work correctly. So where these fibers are being processed is also a really big deal. So this is really what we're looking at. The fibers that we consume should be fermented by bacteria here in our large intestine. That's where that should really happen, and then everything goes pretty well. But that fermentation process creates gases. So when there's a lot of fermentation going on, that can be a problem. So when this becomes a big problem is when there's some type of bacterial overgrowth in this digestive system. So that can happen in the small intestine, where there's like a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, like all the cool kids have today. And it could even happen here in the stomach with some other type of overgrowth. Like H. pylori is very common in the stomach. They don't really ferment fibers, but they do set up the stomach to be more alkaline and invite other bad guys to come in and set up camp, and they can ferment those fibers. So if fibers are being fermented in the stomach or the small intestine, that shouldn't really be happening a whole lot. Remember, it should happen down here. So if they're fermenting here, that's going to create a lot more gases and a lot more pressure, especially if that overgrowth is significant and the body's not taking care of it because of malfunctions that are going on. So the reason that increasing fiber can really magnify these bloating symptoms for a lot of people is if the fibers that they're consuming are high FODMAP type fibers. And FODMAPs is just an acronym for fermentable oleo, di, and monosaccharides and polyols. And these are just short chain carbohydrates that are not really absorbed in the small intestine, so they get fermented here in the large intestine. But remember, if we have a bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine or in the stomach, then they're going to be fermented there. So we'll look at this study here on the low FODMAP diet and clinical practice, and I'll have a link to this in the description below if you want to dig into this a little bit more. But they help us understand that if an individual with some types of digestive issues can use a low FODMAP diet where they're reducing the foods that are really higher in these FODMAPs, then they can really improve a lot of symptoms, because now they're not putting foods in there that are going to be fermented all the time by all of this bacteria. So some examples of some of these foods that are higher in FODMAPs would be things like, onions and lentils and beans and, most pastas and breads and even like apples and bananas. So it's really easy to just Google low FODMAP diet. You're going to find lots of foods out there, lots of different lists that are usually pretty comparable. And you can find a lot of foods like, oh, I eat that, I can eat that, and oh, maybe I should leave that out. Now, I don't view this low FODMAP diet as the solution, but it's a way to really reduce the symptoms that a person could be dealing with if this is what's creating the bloating issue for them. But the real trouble is usually digestive malfunctions, where a person is either not making enough stomach acid, or the bile in their gallbladder has become too thick and sticky and that's not flowing correctly, so now they can't really break down and digest their dietary fats very well. So when these foods here in the stomach, like proteins, are not being acidified and broken down correctly, and we can't break down dietary fats, now the burden of what the body is dealing with and all these other things that are kind of breaking down by like rotting or fermenting is really magnifying all the trouble that's going on in the system. Also, when there's not enough stomach acid there, that's a lot of time what allows the bacteria to come in on the food that we're eating and set up camp. And now we got this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that's fermenting all of these fibers that are coming into the system. So when there's a problem with these digestive issues, we really want to fix those. I'm not going to talk about that here. I've talked about that in about 8,000 different videos, but I will have a link in the description below for our video on full digestive reset, and that'll kind of walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly for you and steps you can take to improve those. Because remember, when we're changing our diet and the types of fibers that we're consuming, that really has the ability to improve those symptoms, but you're not fixing the actual underlying cause. And as soon as you eat some food, like, oh, I just had this bite of pizza or something, and now I have all these symptoms again. But if you can correct the actual underlying causes, then you can really improve the situation. But I do like to see people reduce their FODMAPs right away so they can feel better while they're taking the steps to improve the actual underlying causes of the problem. So when we can work on these causes, now we're not going to have these issues. A lot of the causes that allow the bacteria to set up camp here also have the ability to magnify bloating issues for other reasons and really have the ability to magnify this constipation issue that's then really going to back a person up and make them bloated for a totally different reason. So we really want this stuff to work correctly. Life can be a whole lot better when it's working correctly. So if there's an overgrowth there, we really want to take steps to reduce that. That full digestive reset video will kind of walk you through that process as well. And when we can fix these malfunctions, now we can really digest and break the food down the way that it's supposed to be broken down, and it will move through the system correctly. So I hope that helps you understand why, like, oh man, my friend increased their fiber and their bloating got better, but mine got so much worse. So I hope that helps you understand why and things that you can look at to figure out what's actually creating the trouble for you. So those links will be in the description below, but right now if you're not even sure if you have low stomach acid that could be causing trouble or not, you can jump over and check out our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid. I can't wait to hear about your results.